The morning sun cast long shadows across the Paramount Studios lot as Tess Martinez clutched her script against her chest, heart hammering with a mixture of excitement and terror. At 24, this was her first major role, and she'd spent the previous night memorizing every line until the words felt like prayers on her lips. The security guard barely glanced at her ID as she passed through the gates, but Tess felt exposed nonetheless, as if everyone could see the imposter syndrome written across her face. Stage 7 buzzed with the controlled chaos of a big-budget production. Tess navigated through the maze of equipment trucks, craft services tables, and crew members shouting directions into headsets. The scent of coffee mingled with the sharp smell of fresh paint from the newly constructed sets. She paused at the edge of the soundstage, watching the choreographed dance of pre-production, feeling simultaneously thrilled and overwhelmed. "You must be Tess," a warm voice said behind her.
If you enjoy the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as that greatly helps the channel.
She turned to find Marcus Chun, the director, approaching with a gentle smile that immediately put her at ease. His reputation preceded him. 3 indie darlings that had swept the festival circuit, known for drawing raw, authentic performances from his actors. "Welcome to the madness. Ready to make some magic?" Tess nodded, trying to project more confidence than she felt. "More than ready, Mr. Chun. I've been preparing for months." Marcus chuckled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Please, just Marcus. And preparation only takes you so far. The real magic happens when you forget the script and just live in a moment." He gestured toward the set. "Your scene partner should be here any minute. Have you met Lila yet?" Before Tess could answer, a ripple of energy shifted through the crew. Conversations quieted, heads turned, and even the normally unflappable gaffers paused in their work. Lila Hawthorne had arrived. She moved through the set like she owned it, her flame-red hair caught in a perfect messy bun that probably took her stylist an hour to achieve. Her emerald eyes swept the room with the casual authority of someone who'd been doing this since she was 16, which, Tess recalled from her IMDb deep dive, she had been. At 28, Lila had already earned 2 Golden Globe nominations and a reputation for being both incredibly talented and impossibly difficult to know. Lila's gaze found Tess across the crowded set, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the space between them. Those green eyes studied her with an intensity that made Tess's cheeks burn. Then Lila smiled, not the practiced red carpet smile Tess had seen in magazines, but something smaller, more genuine. "You must be my better half," Lila said as she approached, extending a hand that was surprisingly warm and calloused. "I'm Lila, though I suppose you already know that." Tess shook her hand, acutely aware of how her palm had gone damp with nerves. "Tess Martinez, I'm a huge fan of your work and Midnight in Morocco. The way you handled that courtroom scene was incredible." Something flickered across Lila's face. Surprise, maybe pleasure. "You actually watched it?" "Most people just know me from the rom-com phase." She glanced around the bustling set, then back to Tess. "Want to grab coffee and run through our first scene? I find it helps to get the awkwardness out of the way before we're under the lights." The studio commissary was a study in controlled chaos, filled with actors in various states of costume and makeup, writers hunched over laptops, and executives in expensive suits conducting hushed phone conversations. Tess and Lila found a quiet corner booth, their scripts spread between them alongside steaming cups of what the commissary generously called coffee. "So," Lila said, stirring sugar into her cup, "what's your story? How does a girl from—" She glanced at Tess's bio sheet. "Phoenix end up here?" Tess felt herself relaxing slightly. Despite her intimidating reputation, Lila seemed genuinely interested. "Community theater, mostly. Did some commercial work to pay for acting classes. My agent saw a tape from a showcase and thought I'd be right for this." She paused, then added honestly, "I still can't quite believe I'm here." Lila's expression softened. "I remember that feeling. Cherish it. The wonder wears off faster than you'd think." She leaned back in the booth, studying Tess with those penetrating green eyes. "Marcus doesn't cast on looks alone. He saw something in you. Trust that." They spent the next hour going through their scenes, and Tess was struck by how different Lila was from her public persona. She was thoughtful, asking insightful questions about motivation and subtext. When they practiced the more intimate moments, Lila remained completely professional, but there was something in the way she held eye contact that made Tess's pulse quicken. The key to these scenes, Lila explained, is finding the truth beneath the romance. What are they really saying to each other? What are they afraid to say? She traced a finger along the script's margin. Take this line. I've been thinking about you. On the surface, it's simple. But maybe what she's really saying is, I'm terrified of how much I need you. Tess nodded, scribbling notes. And when she responds with we shouldn't, she's not really talking about the situation, is she? She's talking about her own fear. Exactly. Lila's smile was genuine, impressed. You get it. Most actors want to play the surface. You're looking for the layers. Their first scene together was scheduled for that afternoon, a meeting in a coffee shop, the moment their characters first recognized their mutual attraction. As they walked back to the soundstage, Tess felt a flutter of nervous excitement. She'd rehearsed this moment dozens of times in her apartment, but doing it with Lila, under the bright lights with cameras rolling, felt entirely different. The set was a perfect recreation of a trendy downtown cafe, complete with exposed brick walls, vintage lighting, and the soft murmur of background actors pretending to have conversations. Tess took her place at a small table, smoothing her costume, a simple sundress that the wardrobe department had chosen to make her look approachable and genuine. Lila entered from the opposite side of the set, and immediately, her entire demeanor changed. The casual, thoughtful woman from the commissary disappeared, replaced by someone more guarded, more carefully controlled. It was like watching a masterclass in character work, the way she could shift her entire presence with just a change in posture and expression. Action, Marcus called, and the scene began. Lila's character, Elena, approached the table with measured steps, her eyes scanning the cafe as if looking for escape routes. When she sat across from Tess's character, Maya, there was a palpable tension, an awareness that crackled between them. I wasn't sure you'd come, Maya said, the words carrying more weight than their simplicity suggested. Elena's fingers wrapped around her coffee cup like a shield. I almost didn't. She lifted her gaze to meet Maya's, and even though Tess knew it was acting, the intensity in those green eyes made her breath catch. This is complicated. It doesn't have to be, Maya replied, and Tess let all of her own hope and nervousness feed into the line. Cut, Marcus called, and immediately the spell broke. The crew moved in to adjust lighting, and Lila's mask slipped back into place, professional and distant. That was good, she said to Tess, but her tone was neutral, colleague to colleague. Maybe try leaning in a bit more on the last line. Make it more of a plea than a statement. They ran the scene 3 more times, each take revealing new layers, new subtleties. By the final cut, Tess felt like they'd created something real, something that transcended the words on the page. But the moment Marcus called wrap, Lila was already moving away, checking her phone, slipping back into her protected space. Great work today, she said over her shoulder, and then she was gone, leaving Tess alone on the set with a strange mixture of exhilaration and loneliness. The following weeks fell into a rhythm. Early morning calls, long days under the lights, evening script sessions that left Tess's head spinning with new insights and possibilities. She and Lila developed an easy working relationship, their on-screen chemistry undeniable, their off-screen interactions pleasant but carefully maintained at a professional distance. Tess found herself studying Lila during breaks, fascinated by the way she could shift between her public self and her private one. With the press, she was charming and quotable. With the director, she was collaborative and insightful. With the crew, she was respectful but distant. But there were moments, fleeting glances, small smiles, the way her fingers would linger a beat too long during their scenes, that made Tess wonder if there was something more beneath the surface. She's protecting herself, said Jenny Park, the film's costume designer, as she adjusted Tess's wardrobe for their next scene. Jenny had worked with Lila on 2 previous films and had become something of a confidant to Tess. She's been in this business since she was a kid. You learn to put up walls, or it'll destroy you. Walls against what? Tess asked, genuinely curious. Jenny's expression grew thoughtful as she pinned a hem. Everything. The press, the fans, the executives who see you as a commodity. Other actors who might use your emotions against you. When your personal life becomes public property, you get very careful about who you let in. She stepped back to examine her work. But I've never seen her work with someone the way she works with you. There's something different there. That evening, Tess lingered on the set after wrap, using the quiet time to review her lines for the next day. The soundstage was nearly empty except for a few crew members breaking down equipment, the harsh work lights replaced by softer ambient lighting that made the cafe set look almost romantic. Burning the midnight oil. Lila's voice came from behind her, and Tess turned to find her approaching with 2 cups of coffee from the craft services table. Just going over tomorrow's scenes, Tess said, accepting the coffee gratefully. The emotional beats are pretty intense. Lila settled into the chair across from her, the same positions they'd occupied in dozens of takes. The fight scene, right? Where everything comes to a head. Yeah. Tess flipped through her script, pages covered in her handwritten notes. I'm trying to find the right balance. Maya's angry, but she's also heartbroken. She's lashing out because she cares too much, not too little. It's a tough line to walk, Lila agreed. Elena's not trying to hurt her, but she's so scared of being vulnerable that she ends up being cruel. She took a sip of her coffee, studying Tess over the rim. You know, I've been doing this for 12 years, and I've never worked with someone who understands subtext the way you do. Most actors want to play the obvious choice. I had a really good teacher, Tess said, feeling warmth spread through her chest at the compliment. She always said that the most interesting acting happens in the spaces between the words. Smart teacher. Lila's smile was soft, unguarded in a way that Tess rarely saw. What made you want to act? It was such a simple question, but something in Lila's tone made it feel like she was really asking, not just making conversation. Tess set down her coffee, considering her answer carefully. I think I've always been fascinated by the idea that you can live a dozen different lives, experience things you'd never experience as yourself. But more than that, there's something about finding the truth in a character that feels like uncovering a secret. Like, who is this person when nobody's watching? What do they want that they can't admit, even to themselves? She paused, suddenly self-conscious. That probably sounds pretentious. Not at all. Lila's eyes were intent, focused entirely on Tess. That's exactly what it is. The best actors are the ones who aren't afraid to look into the dark corners. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. Then Lila's phone buzzed, breaking the spell, and she glanced at it with a slight frown. My publicist, she said, standing. I should probably call her back. Early morning tomorrow? Yeah, Tess said, watching as Lila's professional mask slipped back into place. See you tomorrow. As Lila walked away, Tess couldn't shake the feeling that they'd been on the verge of something important, something real. But like so many moments between them, it had dissolved before it could fully form, leaving her with questions she didn't know how to ask. The next day's shooting was indeed intense. Their characters' relationship reached a breaking point, months of unspoken tension exploding into a confrontation that left both Elena and Maya emotionally raw. The scene required them to strip away all pretense, to bare their characters' souls in a way that felt uncomfortably close to reality. You can't keep doing this, Maya said, her voice breaking with frustration. You can't keep pulling me close and then pushing me away. Elena's face was a mask of controlled pain. I never asked you to get this close. No, you just made it impossible for me to stay away. Maya stepped closer, her eyes blazing. Do you have any idea what you do to me? How you make me feel? I never meant. To what? To make me fall in love with you? Well, congratulations, mission accomplished. Now, what are you going to do about it? The words hung in the air between them, loaded with years of subtext and carefully buried emotion. Elena's composure finally cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks as she whispered, I don't know how to do this. Cut, Marcus called, and the set erupted in spontaneous applause. The crew, who had watched in hushed silence, seemed to realize they'd witnessed something special. But Tess barely heard the praise. Her eyes were locked on Lila's face, and she could see that the other actress was still somewhere else, still caught in the emotion of the scene. When their eyes met, there was a moment of raw recognition, as if the lines between character and reality had blurred beyond recognition. Then Lila blinked, and the moment was gone. She turned away, accepting a tissue from the makeup artist, retreating into the safety of professional routine. But Tess had seen it, that flash of something real, something vulnerable. And she knew that whatever was happening between them was no longer just about the roles they were playing. Act 2. The space between. The weeks that followed the emotional breakthrough scene were marked by a strange, charged tension that seemed to permeate every interaction between Tess and Lila. On set, their chemistry was electric, each take building on the last until even the crew members found themselves holding their breath during their scenes. But the moment the cameras stopped rolling, Lila would retreat behind her carefully constructed walls, leaving Tess feeling like she was constantly reaching for something that remained just out of grasp. It was during the filming of a particularly intimate scene, a quiet moment where their characters finally admitted their feelings, that the line between performance and reality began to blur dangerously. The set was dressed as Elena's apartment, all warm lighting and soft textures, designed to feel like a sanctuary away from the world. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, her character's vulnerability written in every line of her body. Elena stood by the window, backlit by the golden hour light that the cinematographer had worked for hours to achieve. The scene called for Elena to finally drop her guard, to cross the room and take Maya's hand, to speak the words that would change everything between them. "I've been running from this," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "From you. From how you make me feel." Maya looked up, hope and fear warring in her expression. "And now I'm tired of running." Elena moved closer, her movements slow and deliberate. "I'm tired of pretending that this isn't real." She reached out, fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against Maya's cheek. The touch was scripted, but the electricity that passed between them was entirely genuine. Tess felt her breath catch, her heart hammering against her ribs as Lila's green eyes searched her face. "I love you," Elena whispered, and though the words belonged to the character, they felt like a confession. "I love you too," Maya replied, and Tess meant it with every fiber of her being. The kiss that followed was supposed to be tender, a gentle seal on their character's declaration. But the moment their lips met, something ignited between them that transcended the script. The kiss deepened, became urgent, desperate, as if they were trying to communicate everything they couldn't say in words. "Cut," Marcus called, his voice filled with satisfaction. "That's the one. Beautiful work, both of you." The crew began to move in, adjusting lights and setting up for the next angle, but Tess and Lila remained frozen in place, still caught in the intensity of what had just passed between them. When they finally broke apart, Lila's eyes were wide with something that looked like shock, or maybe recognition. She started, then stopped, shaking her head. "I need some air." She walked off the set quickly, leaving Tess alone with the overwhelming realization that what she'd felt in that moment had nothing to do with acting and everything to do with the woman behind the character. Tess found her 20 minutes later in the studio's back lot, sitting on a bench beneath a cluster of palm trees, staring out at the Los Angeles skyline. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement, and the distant sound of traffic provided a steady backdrop to the silence between them. "Are you okay?" Tess asked, settling beside her on the bench. Lila didn't answer immediately. She seemed to be wrestling with something, her hands clenched in her lap, her jaw tight with tension. Finally, she spoke, her voice carefully controlled. "This is why I don't do romantic leads anymore. It gets too complicated." "What do you mean?" Lila turned to look at her, and Tess was startled by the vulnerability in her eyes. "You know exactly what I mean. Don't pretend you don't feel it too." Tess's heart hammered in her chest. "Lila, it's unprofessional," Lila continued, as if she was trying to convince herself. "It's messy and complicated, and it always ends badly. I've seen it happen to too many people." "Has it happened to you?" Tess asked quietly. Lila's laugh was bitter. "Once. When I was younger and stupider. I thought I could separate the work from the feelings. I was wrong." She stood abruptly, pacing a few steps away. I won't make that mistake again. What if it's not a mistake? Tess stood too, her voice gaining strength. What if it's just real? Real doesn't matter in this business, Lila said, but her voice lacked conviction. Real gets you hurt. Real gets you headlines you can't control and a reputation that follows you forever. So what? We just pretend it doesn't exist. We finish the film. We do our jobs. And then we move on. Lila's mask was firmly back in place, but Tess could see the cracks in it. I don't think I can do that, Tess said honestly. You have to. Lila's voice was firm, final. Because I can't handle anything else right now. She walked away, leaving Tess alone with the weight of everything that had been said and everything that remained unspoken. The next few days were torture. They continued to work together, continued to create magic on camera, but offset, Lila maintained a careful distance that felt like a wall between them. She was cordial, professional, but the warmth that had been growing between them was gone, replaced by a politeness that felt worse than outright hostility. Tess threw herself into her work, channeling her frustration and longing into her performance. Marcus noticed the change immediately. Whatever's going on with you, keep it up, he said after a particularly powerful take. This is the best work you've done. But the praise felt hollow when she couldn't share it with the person who mattered most. She found herself watching Lila during breaks, noting the way her shoulders held tension, the way her smiles never quite reached her eyes. Whatever distance she was maintaining was costing her too. It was Jenny who finally called Tess out on her misery. You're moping, she said bluntly as she adjusted Tess's costume for the day's scenes. And before you deny it, I've seen enough actors in various states of romantic crisis to recognize the signs. I'm not moping, Tess protested weakly. You're sighing every 30 seconds and you've been staring at that script for 10 minutes without turning a page. Jenny's expression softened. What happened? Tess hesitated, then found herself spilling the whole story. The growing connection, the kiss that had felt too real, Lila's retreat into professional distance. Jenny listened without judgment, her expression thoughtful. She's scared, she said finally. Lila's been hurt before, badly. I don't know all the details, but I know it involved a co-star, and it ended with her name dragged through the tabloids for months. She's been very careful ever since. So, what am I supposed to do? Just give up? I don't know, Jenny said honestly. But I do know that she's been just as miserable as you are. Whatever she's fighting, it's not easy for her either. That evening, Tess made a decision. She couldn't force Lila to feel differently, but she could at least try to understand. She found herself outside Lila's trailer, script in hand, heart pounding with nerves. Come in, Lila called when she knocked. The trailer was small but comfortable, decorated with personal touches that made it feel like a temporary home. Books were stacked on every available surface, and a small plant sat on the windowsill, somehow thriving despite the artificial environment. I wanted to go over tomorrow's scenes, Tess said, which was true, if not the whole truth. Lila looked up from her own script, wariness flickering across her features. Of course. Sit down. They worked through the scenes in professional silence, discussing motivation and blocking, but the elephant in the room grew larger with each passing minute. Finally, Tess couldn't stand it anymore. I miss talking to you, she said quietly. Really talking, not just about work. Lila's pen stilled on the page. Tess. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But pushing me away isn't making it go away. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Tess leaned forward, her voice earnest. What happened to you? What made you so afraid of this? For a moment, Lila's composure wavered. Her green eyes filled with pain and something that might have been longing. Then she shook her head, the wall slamming back into place. It doesn't matter. This conversation is over. No, it's not. Tess stood, her own frustration finally boiling over. You can't just dismiss this. You can't dismiss me. I'm not dismissing you. I'm protecting both of us. From what? From being happy? From having something real? From getting destroyed by it? The words exploded out of Lila with a force that seemed to surprise them both. She stood abruptly, pacing to the small window. You have no idea what this business does to relationships. What it does to people who make the mistake of falling in love with their co-stars. Tell me, Tess said softly. Lila was quiet for a long moment, her reflection ghost-like in the trailer's window. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Her name was Sarah. We did an indie film together 3 years ago. I thought I was being careful, thought we could keep it private. But someone got photos of us together, and suddenly our relationship was front-page news. She turned back to face Tess, her expression raw. They tore us apart, called it a publicity stunt, said I was using her to get attention. The stress of it destroyed what we had. She couldn't handle the pressure, and I couldn't blame her. I'm not Sarah, Tess said quietly. No, you're not. You're newer, more vulnerable. You have more to lose. Lila's voice cracked slightly. I won't be responsible for destroying your career before it even starts. That's not your choice to make. Isn't it? I'm the one with the reputation. I'm the one the press will target. You'll get caught in the crossfire, and I can't. She stopped, pressing her hands to her face. I can't watch that happen again. Tess felt her heart breaking for the woman in front of her, for the pain she carried, for the fear that had kept her isolated for so long. She crossed the small space between them, gently taking Lila's hands in her own. What if we're careful? What if we take it slow, keep it private? There's no such thing as private in this business, Lila said, but she didn't pull her hands away. Someone always finds out. Someone always talks. Then we deal with it when it happens. Together. Lila looked down at their joined hands, her walls crumbling bit by bit. I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to trust this. We figure it out as we go, Tess said, her thumb tracing gentle circles on Lila's palm. We don't have to have all the answers right now. For a moment, it seemed like Lila might give in, might let herself believe in the possibility of something beautiful and real. But then she pulled her hands away, the familiar mask sliding back into place. I need time, she said. Can you give me that? Tess nodded, even though it felt like her heart was being torn in two. I can give you time, but I can't give you forever. The days that followed were a delicate dance of professional courtesy and careful distance. They worked together seamlessly on camera, their chemistry undimmed by the personal tension between them. But off camera, they moved around each other like magnets with opposing poles, drawn together but unable to connect. It was during the filming of the climactic scene, the moment when their characters finally committed to each other despite all obstacles, that everything changed. The scene was set on a rooftop overlooking the city, the lights of Los Angeles twinkling like stars beneath them. I know you're scared, Maya said, her voice carrying across the night air. I'm scared too. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Elena stood at the edge of the rooftop, the wind whipping her hair around her face. What if we're making a mistake? Then we'll make it together. Maya moved closer, her hand extended. Take my hand. Trust me. Trust us. Elena looked at the offered hand, then up at Maya's face, seeing all the love and hope and courage reflected there. Slowly, she reached out, their fingers touching, then entwining. I love you, she whispered, and the words carried the weight of surrender, of finally letting go of fear in favor of hope. I love you too, Maya replied, and they came together in a kiss that was both an ending and a beginning. Cut, Marcus called, and the set erupted in cheers. It was a wrap on their character's story, the end of weeks of emotional labor and artistic collaboration. But as the crew began to break down the set, Tess and Lila remained on the rooftop, still holding hands, still caught in the emotion of the scene. The city spread out below them, vast and glittering with possibility. That felt. Lila started, then stopped, shaking her head. Real. Tess finished for her.
Yeah.
Real. They stood in silence, the weight of the moment settling around them. Finally, Lila spoke, her voice barely audible over the distant traffic. I'm still scared. So am I. But maybe. Lila turned to face her, and Tess saw something new in her green eyes. Not just fear, but hope. Maybe scared together is better than safe alone. This time, when their lips met, it wasn't for the cameras or the script or the story they were telling. It was just for them, two people who had found something worth fighting for in each other. Act 3. When the cameras stop rolling. The wrap party was held at a trendy rooftop bar in West Hollywood, the kind of place where beautiful people gathered to see and be seen. String lights cast a warm glow over the celebration, and the buzz of conversation mixed with carefully curated music created the perfect backdrop for industry networking and congratulations. Tess arrived fashionably late, having spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing her outfit, a simple black dress that struck the right balance between professional and approachable. She'd learned enough about Hollywood events to know that everything was a performance, including the performances of not performing. The party was in full swing when she arrived. Marcus was holding court near the bar, regaling a group of producers with stories from the shoot. The cinematographer was showing behind-the-scenes photos on his phone to anyone who would look. And there, near the edge of the rooftop, stood Lila. She was surrounded by the usual crowd, journalists, agents, other actors who had come to network and be photographed. But even from across the party, Tess could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. It was the public Lila, the one who knew exactly what to say and when to say it, but who kept her true self carefully hidden. Their eyes met across the crowded space, and for a moment, everything else faded away. The connection that had been building between them over weeks of work and stolen moments crystallized into something undeniable. But then someone asked Lila a question, and the moment was broken. Tess made her way through the party, accepting congratulations and making small talk with crew members who had become friends over the course of the shoot. Everyone was high on the energy of completion, the satisfaction of having created something beautiful together. But Tess found it hard to focus on the conversations, her attention constantly drifting to Lila. "You clean up nice," Jenny said, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. Very promising young actress at her first major wrap party. "Is that what I look like?" Tess asked, accepting the drink gratefully. "You look like someone who's trying very hard to pretend she's not watching a certain redhead across the party." Tess felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Am I that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been watching this dance for weeks." Jenny's expression grew serious. "Whatever's happening between you two, be careful. This town loves a good romance, but it loves destroying one even more." Before Tess could respond, Marcus appeared, his face flushed with champagne and success. "There's my star," he said, throwing an arm around Tess's shoulders. "I've been telling everyone about your performance. Raw, honest, completely fearless. You're going to have agents fighting over you." "Thank you," Tess said, genuinely touched. "This whole experience has been incredible." "The film is going to be something special," Marcus continued. "The chemistry between you and Lila, I've never seen anything like it. It's like you were born to work together." Tess glanced across the party to where Lila was still surrounded by hangers-on, her gaze catching Lila's for a fleeting second before Lila looked away, her public mask firmly in place. Tess felt a familiar ache of frustration. All that honesty, all that vulnerability they'd shared, and here they were, back to polite distance. Lila's smile felt frozen. Another reporter was asking about her, returned to dramatic roles, and she recited the usual platitudes about growth and challenging herself. Her eyes, however, kept drifting to Tess across the room. Tess, looking stunning in a simple black dress, talking to Marcus, her face alight with genuine joy. That raw, open joy was something Lila had forgotten how to cultivate, or perhaps had never truly possessed. She felt the old walls tightening around her, the familiar anxiety of exposure. Sarah's face flashed in her mind. The headlines, the accusations, the way their love had been reduced to fodder for public consumption. She'd promised herself she'd never let that happen again. And yet, here was Tess, unsettling her carefully constructed piece with every shared glance, every lingering memory of a scripted kiss that had felt devastatingly real. "Lila, darling, a word?" Her agent, Veronica, a woman with a smile like a shark and eyes that missed nothing, appeared beside her. Veronica steered her slightly away from the crowd, her voice dropping. "The buzz on this film is incredible. They're already talking Oscar for you and for Tess. That girl is a revelation." Lila managed a nod. "She's very talented." Veronica's gaze sharpened, flicking between Lila and Tess. Indeed. And that chemistry, well, it's undeniable. Just keep it on screen, dear. You know how these things go. Her voice was soft, but the warning was clear. Don't make another mistake. Lila felt a familiar cold dread. She hated this part of her job, the constant vigilance, the need to police her own heart. She glanced at Tess again and saw Tess looking at her, a silent question in her eyes. Are you going to let fear win? Lila swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. She knew what she should do. Maintain distance. Be professional. Let the film be the only thing that connected them. But then she remembered Tess's voice on the rooftop. Maybe scared together is better than safe alone. The words resonated deep inside her, chipping away at the foundation of her carefully built defenses. Tess decided she couldn't stand it anymore. She set her champagne glass down and began to move, not towards Lila directly, but towards the edge of the rooftop, as if seeking a moment alone. The night air was cool, a welcome contrast to the humid press of bodies inside. She looked out at the glittering expanse of the city, a million tiny lights that felt both distant and intimately connected. A moment later, she heard footsteps beside her. Hiding from the cameras? Lila's voice was a low murmur, closer than Tess expected. Tess turned, her heart skipping. Lila stood beside her, no longer surrounded by her entourage. Her public mask wasn't entirely gone, but it was looser, the tension in her jaw still evident, but less rigid. Just needed some air, Tess replied, her voice soft. It's a lot, isn't it? All of this. Lila nodded, her gaze fixed on the city lights. Always. Especially after finishing a project like this. It's exhilarating, but also a little empty. Like you've poured so much of yourself into something, and now it's over. And then you have to figure out who you are again. Tess finished, her thoughts mirroring Lila's exactly. A silence settled between them, comfortable yet charged. The music from the party was a distant thrum, the city a quiet hum. I saw Marcus talking to you earlier, Lila said, her voice quiet. He's right. Your performance was incredible. You're going to be huge. Only because you made me better, Tess said, turning to face Lila fully. You pushed me. You challenged me. You made me look for the truth. Lila finally met her gaze, and in the ambient glow of the string lights, Tess could see the unguarded vulnerability she'd glimpsed on set, but rarely off it. And you reminded me what it felt like to actually feel something, not just act it. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Tess felt the pull towards her, a magnetism that defied logic and professional boundaries. She remembered Lila's fear, her story about Sarah. But she also remembered the kiss on the rooftop, the genuine surrender in Lila's eyes. Lila, Tess began, her voice a little shaky, I know what you said about it being messy. And I know your history. But after all this time, after everything we've shared, on and off screen, I can't just pretend this isn't real. Lila's breath hitched. Her emerald eyes searched Tess's, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions visible within them. Fear, longing, doubt, and a desperate, fragile hope. What if, Lila whispered, her voice barely audible, what if I'm too broken for this? What if I can't protect you from all of it? She gestured vaguely at the glittering city below, the symbol of the industry that had wounded her. Tess reached out, her hand hovering, then gently cupped Lila's cheek. The touch was soft, reassuring, a silent promise. You don't have to protect me. We protect each other. And you're not broken, Lila. You're human. You're brave for feeling things, even when it hurts. Tess leaned in, her gaze unwavering. And I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to be real. With me. Lila's eyes brimmed with unshed tears, but this time they were tears of release. She closed her eyes for a moment, leaning into Tess's touch, as if drawing strength from it. When she opened them again, the public mask was gone, completely. What remained was just Lila, raw and vulnerable and undeniably beautiful. Tess, she breathed, her voice a confession. I don't know how to do this publicly. I don't know how to navigate the scrutiny without shutting down again. Then we don't do it publicly, Tess said, her thumb stroking Lila's cheekbone. We figured out. We find our own way. Maybe we take it slow. Maybe we just see each other when the cameras aren't rolling. When no one's watching. Lila's gaze flickered to Tess's lips, then back to her eyes. Can we? We can try, Tess promised, her voice filled with a quiet conviction. We can fight for it. If you want to. A profound stillness settled over Lila's features, a quiet resolution taking root. She looked at Tess, really looked at her, and Tess saw a flicker of the fearless spirit that had made Lila a star, now directed inward, towards herself. I want to, Lila said, her voice clear, infused with a newfound strength. God, Tess, I wanna. More than I've wanted anything in a long time. And this time, when Lila leaned in and captured Tess's lips in a kiss, it was a slow, deliberate act of true connection. It was a kiss born not of a script or a character, but of two souls recognizing each other amidst the chaos, of a deep longing finally given permission to breathe. It was a kiss that tasted of courage, of whispered hopes, and the quiet, fierce promise of a love that would begin, truly, when the cameras stopped rolling. They pulled apart, breathless, their foreheads resting against each other. The party's distant murmur faded to background noise. So, Tess whispered, her lips still tingling, what happens now? Lila's eyes, clear and brilliant, held a spark of something Tess had longed to see there, genuine joy, unfiltered by fear. Now, Lila said, a soft, genuine smile spreading across her face, we find out.